So, Ayam tu sakshad Bhagavam Tridhashiha Kutastha Atma Kalayavartinaha Yasmin Avidya Rachitam Nirarthakam Pashyanti Nanatvam Api Pratitam. The king is the master of the three worlds and is directly empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is without change and he is an incarnation of the Supreme known as Shaktavesh Avatar. Being a liberated soul and completely learned, he sees all material varieties as meaningless because their basic principle is nescience. Now, this is not true of every king. Of course, the king is the representative of the Supreme Personality of God only if he is acting according to the directions of the Supreme Lord. But here, this particular king, King Prthu Maharaj, he is directly a Shaktavesh avatar. And he is liberated because he's Shaktavesh avatar. And all material varieties he sees as meaningless because their basic principle is nescience. So in this world, all these varieties are different configurations of earth, water, fire, air, ether. Earth, water, fire, air, ether has combined into different shapes. And that's why we have so many different bodies and like that. But the basic principle of material world is ignorance. Because here this is the kingdom of what is this is the kingdom of
Durga.
Durga Devi, Maya. This is the kingdom of Maya. This is the kingdom of illusion. So everybody is in illusion in this material world. So it is Krishna Samasurya Maya hoy andhakar. Yaha Krishna naha tahi taha nahi Maya adhikar. So everybody is bound by illusion in this material world. That's why we say Tamasoma Jyotirgama. Take me from darkness to light. So of course, here in this material world, we can be enlightened if we hear about Krishna and we become Krishna conscious. But generally, in this material world, everybody is in illusion, and the illusion is I am the body. I am the body, and also I am the mind. I am the mind means I am this material mind. That is also illusion. I am spiritual, basically. I am soul. Soul has its own mind, which is spiritual, but this material mind, I'm identifying with this material mind, which has all the material desires. There is two aspects of the mind. There is one aspect that has all the material desires, and I'm identifying with this material mind as myself. So we have to ignore the mind also. Like Prabhupada said, when you chant Hare Krishna, where is the question of mind? Means if the mind, the material side of the mind, if it's spiritual, if it is giving you thoughts of Krishna, and that's good. But other side of the mind is the material mind, and I'm not that material mind because in my pure state I'm. So this mind is the one that perceives, enjoyment and distress. So it is this material mind that gets bored with chanting of Hare Krishna and devotional service. So we have to ignore that mind. And he said, no, you may get bored, but this is the activity of the soul. Prabhupada said like that. Where is the question of mind? You have to chant this. I am doing the soul's activity. I am the soul, and chanting Hare Krishna is soul's activity. Whether you like it or you don't like it, I don't care. You are material mind, so I don't care for you. So like that you ignore. So anyway, so in this we are all bound by the modes of material nature. So the reciters of these prayers are describing the transcendent qualities of Prthu Maharaj. These qualities are summarized in the word Sakshat Bhagwan. Sakshat Haritvena Samasta Shastre. This indicates that Maharaj Prthu is directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead and therefore possesses unlimited good qualities. Being an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Maharaj Prthu could not be equaled in his excellent qualities. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is fully equipped with six kinds of opulences, and King Prthu was also empowered in such a way that he could display the six opulences of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in full. So he is having uh, the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In full means as much as he could exhibit. He is a Shaktavesh avatar. The word Kutastha, meaning without change, is also very significant. There are two kinds of living entities, Nitya Mukta and Nitya Baddha. A Nitya Mukta never forgets his position as the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who does not forget this position and knows that he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord is Nitya Mukta. Such a Nitya Mukta living entity represents the Super Soul and is as his expansion. As stated in Vedas Nitya Nityanam. Thus, the Nitya Mukta living entity knows that he is an expansion of the Supreme Nitya, or the eternal Supreme Personality of Godhead. Being in such a position, he sees the material world with a different vision. The living entity who is Nitya Baddha or eternally conditioned sees the material varieties as being actually different from one another. In this connection, we should remember that the embodiment of the conditioned soul is considered to be like a dress. One may dress in different ways, but really learned man does not take dresses into consideration. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 5.18, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Kavihastini Shuni Chaiva Svapakecha Pandita Samadarshina. The humble sage, by virtue of true knowledge, sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, a cow, an elephant, a dog, and a dog eater. Thus, a learned man does not look upon the dresses that externally cover the living entity, but sees the pure soul within the varieties of dress and knows very well that the varieties of dress are creation of nations, avidya rachitam. Being a Shaktavesh avatar empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prthu Maharaj did not change his spiritual position, and consequently there was no possibility of viewing the material world as reality. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that, right? What is that? Why it is not the reality? Because it is not permanent. What's the verse yesterday we were discussing? Na sato
नासतो विद्यते भावो न भावो भयरूपे दर्शिभिः.
Darshibi. So what is real and what is not real? Then what Krishna
The
says.
material body has no endurance.
So it is
It's
not.
not real. And the spirit soul, there is no change. It's real.
So I mean, it's sometimes we say it's not real means it's temporary. That's why it's not real. But it's there. While it's there, it's there. But it is not real because it will not last, and our identification with the material body is also not real. So we are in illusion. So the person who is liberated, he does not see in illusion. He sees everybody is wearing different dress. Somebody is wearing a cow dress. Somebody is wearing an elephant dress. Somebody is wearing a dog dress. But beneath that dress is the person who is the spirit soul. So these are avidya rachitam. Rachitam means creation of avidya, ignorance. So we get different bodies based on our desires and karma, like that. The jiva desires to enjoy in different ways and he gets different kinds of bodies. But we are all spirit souls beneath this. So, and the body should be taken care of because it's a tool to for self-realization, but it will not stay.
So, I mean, in Bhagavatam also Brahma says, Rate artham yat pratyeta na pratyeta chatmani. Tad vidyādatmano mayam yatha bhaso yatha tamaha. That which is not seen in relationship to Krishna is Maya. But if we see everything in relationship to Krishna, that is, this is Krishna's, then everything is Krishna's energy, and because Krishna is eternal, real, and everything is also real if we see that in relationship to Krishna, to be used in his service, in part and parcel of Krishna.
That's the good point. Yeah, body is Krishna's energy, And so body should be used for Krishna's service, not for my sense gratification. Because I don't own the body. Krishna owns the body. So like that. I'm owner, but Krishna has given it to me for some time. I'm living in it. But all the elements are Krishna's energy. So it should be used for Krishna service, not for my enjoyment, sense gratification, but it should be used for the service of Krishna. Then the body is not Maya. Otherwise, the body is Maya in the sense that I'm not using it for the purpose it is intended to be. So, body is meant for self realization, not for sense gratification. Of course, we have biological demands of the body, right? Eating, mating, sleeping, like that. So those can be fulfilled in a Krishna conscious way. Like we have the need for eating. Nobody can live without eating. So we eat as much as necessary to keep the body and soul together and eat Krishna prasadam. Okay, so whatever we do with the body, we should offer it to Krishna. Right? Yat karoshi, yad ashnasi, yad juhosi dadasi, yad. Of course, it's not like we do wrong things, yeah, with the body and then, yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just completing. Yat tapasyasi kante tat kurushvat madarpanam.
Yes, Madarpanam. So, all that we do with our senses, of course, it has to be according to Shastra, not like I eat meat and say, oh no, I'm eating this. So, not like that. So, we have to do everything. So then we will be free from anxiety. Everything belongs to Krishna. Krishna has given me the body, he will take it away also. As time, he will take away. So there is nothing is mine. I've been given some things to use on lease, like we lease a car, right? So company, some executives they lease a car because the company provides them a car. But while they have the car, that car is meant to be used for the company's interest. So so similarly, the body is on lease, and while we'll have the body, it is meant to be used for Krishna's interest. Okay. The king, being uniquely powerful and heroic, will have no competitor. He will travel around the globe on his victorious chariot, holding his invincible bow in his hand, and appearing exactly like the sun, which rotates in its own orbit from the south. So, king will be like unsurpassable, like nobody will be there too, and he will go around his chariot. In this verse, the word yatha arkaha, arkaha is the sun, indicates that the sun is not fixed but is rotating in its orbit, which is said by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in Brahma Samhita and also in other parts of Srimad Bhagavatam. Yat chakshuresha savita sakala grahanam raja samasta murti rashesha teja. What's the next line? Yat chakshuresha savita sakala grahanam raja samasta murti rashesha teja sambritam kala chakro.
यस्याज्ञया भ्रमित संवृत कालचक्रो.
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So, Yasyagnaya. Yasya means whose, Agya means order. By the order of the sun, by the order of Krishna, Govinda, the sun is moving in its orbit. And he is the king, Raja Samasta Suramurti Rashesha Teja. He has unlimited Ashesha Teja, light, and is the king of all the planets. So it's the eye of the Supreme Lord. Yat chakshur esha savita. Sakala Grahanam. Sakala means all, Grahanam means all the planets. Okay. In the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that the sun rotates in its own orbit at the rate of 16,000 miles per second. Similarly, Brahma Samhita states, Yasyagnaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakra. The sun rotates in its orbit according to the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The conclusion is that sun is not fixed in one place. As far as Prthu Maharaj is concerned, it is indicated that his ruling power would extend all over the world. The Himalaya mountains, from which the sunrise is first seen, are called Udayachal or Udayadri. Udayadri. It is herein indicated that Prthu Maharaj's reign over the world would cover even Himalaya mountains and extend to the border of all oceans and seas. In other words, his reign would cover the entire planet. Another significant word in this verse is Naradev, as described in previous chapters. The qualified king, be he King Prthu or any other king who rules over the state as an ideal king, should be understood to be God in human form, Naradev. Like in that Lord Chaitanya says Narapati. Narapati means the husband of all the living entities. I don't want to be Naham Vipro Nach Narapatir Napi Vaishyo Nasudro. Narapati is Kshatriya. So Vipra is Brahmana. He says, I am not a Brahmana, I am not a Kshatriya. Kshatriya is the king. According to Vedic culture, the king is honored as the supreme personality of Godhead because he represents Narayan, who also gives protection to the citizens. He is therefore Natha or the proprietor. Even Sanatan Goswami gave respect to Nawab Hussain Shah as Naradev. Although the Nawab was Mohammedan, a king or governmental head must therefore be so competent to rule over the state that the citizens will worship him as God in human form. That is the perfectional stage for the head of any government or state. So the leader is a representative of God, and the king, who is the leader, should represent God. That's all he's saying here. Okay, so the next verse. When the king travels all over the world, other kings as well as the demigods will offer him all kinds of presentations. Their queens will also consider him the original king. So there are many other kings under his domain. And when he will travel, then the others will offer him all kinds of gifts. And those kings, queens, will also consider him the original king because he is a representative of the Supreme Lord. Like Krishna is the original husband of everyone. He is the who carries in his hand the emblems of club and disc and will sing of his fame. For he will be as reputable as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He should rather be a Shakta. He says Shaktavesh Avatar, but it seems like he is like as good as Vishnu. Vishnu Tattva. Because he has club and disc in his hand and he is the original king, the other queens. So that is the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the only Purusha and who is the husband or Nath, Jagannath, the Lord of everyone. As far as reputation is concerned, King Prthu is already known as the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Adi Rajam means the original king. The original king is Narayan or Lord Vishnu. People do not know that the original king or Narayan is actually the proprietor of all living entities. So Krishna is Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. As confirmed in the Vedas, Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. Nityo Nityanam Chetana Chetanam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman. Actually, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is maintaining all living entities. The king or Naradev is his representative. So God is maintaining everybody. We are all eternal living beings, but amongst us eternals, there is one supreme eternal who is maintaining all the other eternals, and that is who is providing for all the needs of the other souls, and that is Krishna. As such, the king's duty is to personally supervise the distribution of wealth for the maintenance of all living entities. So everything is coming by Krishna's grace. Sometimes people say it's in nature, right? Nature. They're saying nature. Nature is providing everything. But nature is working under Krishna's direction, and nature is Krishna's nature. So we are very, as Balram Bro was saying, we are radically personal. It's not impersonal. Nature means impersonal, right? Nature is providing all the different varieties of fruits and vegetables, but this nature is designed by Krishna, or it works under Krishna's direction. So everything in Vedas is personal. There is a person behind everything we say. Even the movement of our hand is controlled by some demigod. The movement of eyebrows or eyelids is controlled by the by the demigods. For every movement, there is a person in charge. So, if he does so, he will be as reputable as Narayan. And sometimes that is very difficult for people to accept. That's why nature, they say nature is providing. That's like more impersonal kind of thing. Nature is providing like that, but nature is, who designed the nature? How did the nature? Oh, it's there. It's there. Without any designer, anybody's. It just happened to be. It's just happening like that. So we say no. That's in Vedas. They say no. This nature is Krishna's nature. So there is a person behind it, and if he does so, he will be as reputable as Narayan. And that's difficult to accept, that there is a person behind this nature, because how can whole nature be created by a person? Because a person means like me, and I cannot create a nature like this. So that's the difficulty. So, but then we understand, no, Krishna is also same quality as me, but he's unlimitedly powerful. So he can create. As mentioned in this verse, and that requires faith to accept that God is a person. As mentioned in this verse, Tad Yashaha. Prthu Maharaj was actually carrying with him the reputation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he was actually reigning over the world in that capacity. Okay, any comments on this verse? Okay, so next verse. This king, this protector of citizens, is an extraordinary king and is equal to Prajapati demigods. So they are praising. This whole chapter is praise of King Prthu by the professional reciters. And they are giving a lot of qualities about Prthu Maharaj. For the living facility of all citizens, he will milk the earth, which is like a cow. Not only that, he will level the surface of earth with pointed ends of his bow, breaking all the hills exactly as King Indra, the heavenly king, breaks mountains with his powerful thunderbolt. So he will create a situation for all his citizens so that they will be able to live very prosperously. So he will level the hills with his bow, and he will milk the earth, means he will provide the food. When the lion travels in the forest with its tail turned upwards, all minion animals hide themselves. Similarly, when King Prthu will travel all over his kingdom and vibrate the string of his bow, which is made of horns of goats and bulls, is irresistible in the battle, all demoniac rogues and thieves will hide themselves in all directions. So, when lion comes, then everybody hides. So, Prthu Maharaj, when he will be moving, then all thieves will be very afraid and they'll flee. It is very appropriate to compare a powerful king like Prthu to a lion. In India, Kshatriya kings are still called Singh. Many people have this last name, Singh. Singh, which means lion. So they are like from Kshatriya, especially in Punjab. They have this Singh at the end, last name. So they were Kshatriyas like that. Unless rogues, thieves, and other demonic people in state are afraid of the executive head who rules the kingdom with a strong hand, there cannot be peace or prosperity in the state. Thus, it is most regrettable that when a woman becomes the executive head of a executive head instead of a lion-like king. In such a situation, the people are considered very unfortunate. Of course, anybody is not really suitable to become man or woman if they are not devoted to the Supreme Lord. Something like that. Devotees should be the leaders. Guru na sasyat, jananiya sasyat, pita na sasyat. Na mochayedya samupeta mrityam. Says, don't become any leader unless you are able to deliver your dependents from the cycle of birth and death. Don't become father, don't become mother, don't become guru. So, okay. So, what is the time? Okay.
There is,
Yeah.
also a verse which says that if one chants the holy name of the Lord, all the reactions of his sinful life depart just as a lion roars and all the small animals flee in fear.
Right.
So, chanting of the holy name is also, as we're saying, it's not different from Krishna. It's like that lion.
It's a nice verse from Garud Puran, I think, right? That the lion, the holy name.
Garud Puran, yes. I have that. Paste the link. Paste the verse. अवेश्नापि यन्नाम्नि कीर्तिते सर्वपातके पुमान् विमुच्यते सद्यः सिंहदृष्टिर्मृगैरिव. If one chants the holy name of the Lord, even in a helpless condition or without desiring to do so, all the reactions of his sinful life depart, just as when a lion roars, all the small animals flee in fear.
How nice. And not only the reactions of sinful life, but our propensity to commit sins also goes away. That's the chanting.
Also, Yamadutas run away in fear. Also, you've seen a Jamal section. They are afraid of a devotee, and fear is, the holy name is feared by fear personified.
Yeah. So, this is the reason also Vishnu Dutas give, right, to Yamadutas, that why they can't take Ajamil. I think they can't take Ajamil because he has chanted the name of Narayan.
Correct. In his helpless condition.
Let's see here. Shukdev Goswami said, "My dear king, servants of Lord Vishnu are always very expert in logic and arguments. After hearing the statement of Yamadutas, they replied as follows." So, Yamadutas are saying, no, no, this is our candidate. The Vishnu Dutta said, alas, how painful. Irreligion is being introduced. So there, and then I think here it says, Ajamil has already atoned for all his sinful actions. Indeed, he has atoned not only for sins performed in one life, but for those performed in millions of lives. For in a helpless condition, he chanted the holy name of Narayan. Even though he did not chant purely, he chanted without offense, and therefore is now pure and eligible for liberation. So he was always chanting Narayan, Narayan.
Yeah, in some purport, Prabhupada writes that when Yamadutas came and he called for his son Narayan, he actually remembered the Lord.
The Narayan he worshipped in his previous life, in his young age.
Yeah.
Not in this verse. Some other chapter it says. Okay, maybe it is like when he's chanting, so it must be in the previous chapter. He's chanting. Okay. So, chanting the holy name will give remembrance. Prabhupada says if you want to remember Krishna and never forget Krishna, then this chanting of 16 rounds is absolutely essential. So, at the source of the river, Saraswati, this king will perform 100 sacrifices known as Ashwamedh. In the course of last sacrifice, the heavenly king Indra will steal the sacrificial horse. So now the story comes in this about how Indra, every time Prthu Maharaj is doing yagna, he has done 99 yagnas and he was going to do the 100th yagna. And Indra was very perturbed because Prthu will become very powerful and then he comes as a sadhu and he steals the horse. Thus, this king Prthu will meet Sanat Kumar, one of the four Kumaras, in the garden of his palace compound. So, when King Prthu has been coronated, the professional reciters or whoever they were praising, they were saying what is going to happen in Prithu's life. So, first they are saying that he will perform Ashwamedh yagnas and Indra will steal, and now they are saying he'll be.
Same thing happened with Parikshit Maharaj. They were already predicting that he will be cursed by son of a Brahmana. And he would hear Bhagavatam, Shukdev
Yeah.
Goswami. It was all predicted. Canto 1.
Yeah, at the time of his birth only they were saying, right? What will
But, yeah, correct.
This King Prithu will meet Sanat Kumar, one of the four Kumaras, in the garden of his palace compound. The king will worship him with devotion and will be fortunate to receive instructions by which one can enjoy transcendental bliss. So there is nice instruction of the Kumaras to Prithu Maharaj. The word Vidanti refers to one who knows something or enjoys something. Vid means to know. Veda is knowledge. Vid means to know. Veda vid eva chaham. When a person is properly instructed by a spiritual master and understands transcendental bliss, he enjoys life. So, spiritual life means we will enjoy. We'll enjoy life very much in spiritual consciousness. Brahma Sokhyadvanantam. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma. Evam Prasanna Manaso. Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataya. Bhagavad Tattva Vijnana Mukta Sangasya Jayate. Like that. Everywhere Prasanna Manaso, very joyful. Susukham Kartum Avyayam. It is very joyfully performed. So as we become free from material desires, we will become very joyful. And engaged in Krishna's service, we will become very joyful and happy. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 1854. Normally we think if I fulfill my material desires, then I'll become very joyful. But when we become detached, detachment gives peace. Like in the story of Pingala. Detachment from sense gratification. She became detached from as long as she was attached to sense gratification, there was anxiety. But when she became detached from sense gratification, then she experienced peace and she went to sleep very peacefully. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 1854, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na sojati na kankshati. When one attains to the Brahman platform, he neither hankers nor laments. He actually partakes of transcendental blissful enjoyment. Although King Prithu was an incarnation of Vishnu, he nonetheless taught the people in his kingdom to take instructions from a spiritual master who represents the disciplic succession. So, he becomes very joyful, he neither hankers, he becomes blissful. Thus, one can become fortunate and enjoy blissful life even within this material world. Vishwam Purnam Sukhayate. In this verse, the verb vidanti is sometimes taken to mean understanding. So, spiritual life is meant for enjoyment. We are supposed to enjoy. Prabhupada says, what is the goal of life? Goal of life is to enjoy. So, all the devotees who are preaching and traveling and, who are dedicated their full life to Krishna's service, they are very joyful because they have taken shelter of Krishna. And Krishna is very joyful. So, by taking shelter of Krishna, we also become joyful. In this verse, the word vidanti is sometimes taken to mean understanding. Thus, when a person understands Brahman, or the supreme source of everything, he enjoys a blissful life. So, it is only because we are not sufficiently surrendered to Krishna. That's why we are in anxiety. When we surrender to Krishna, then we are joyful. Okay. Anything else anyone would like to say on this? Okay, we'll stop here. Or we'll read one more verse. In this way, when the chivalrous activities of King Prthu come to be known to the people in general, King Prthu will always hear about himself and his uniquely powerful activities. To artificially advertise oneself and thus enjoy a so-called reputation is kind of conceit. Prthu Maharaj was famous amongst the people because of his chivalrous activities. He did not have to advertise himself artificially. One's factual reputation cannot be covered. So, he was, because of his, prowess and like that, people came to know. He did not have to tell. Like Madhavendra Puri also, he did not have to advertise himself as a great devotee. And no devotee will advertise like that. But his fame spread. So, like that. Closed. Okay, so we have seen beautiful Krishna Balram. All right. Anything else anybody like to say?
I can complete the song. Your Adaram Madhuram. Last 4 verses.
Okay. You can put the link. I think. Yeah, it's here. Adaram Madhuram.
And you can actually go word to word.
Okay.
And as we sing, we can see also the meaning. If you scroll down. Yeah.
So click here and then.
Starting from 5. Karanam madhuram taranam madhuram haranam madhuram ramanam madhuram vamitam madhuram shamitam madhuram madhuradhipaterakhilam madhuram gunja madhura mala madhura yamuna madhura vichi madhura shalilam madhuram kamalam madhuram madhuradhipate akhilam madhuram गोपी मधुरा लीला मधुरा युक्तं मधुरं भुक्तं मधुरं रेष्टं मधुरं शिष्टं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरं गोपा मधुरा गाओ मधुरा यष्टि मधुरा सृष्टिर्मधुरा दलितं मधुरं फलितं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरम् अधरं मधुरं वदनं मधुरं नयनं मधुरं हसितं मधुरं हृदयं मधुरं गमनं मधुरं मधुराधिपते अखिलं मधुरम्. So I'll read the translation from verse 5. His deeds are sweet. His liberating is sweet. His stealing is sweet. His love sports are sweet. His oblations are sweet. His tranquility is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. His gunja berry necklace is sweet. His flower garland is sweet. His Yamuna river is sweet. His ripples are sweet. His water is sweet. His lotuses are sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. His gopis, the cowherd boys also, are sweet. His pastimes are sweet. His union is sweet. His food is sweet. His delight is sweet. His courtesy is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. His gopas are sweet. His cows are sweet. His staff is sweet. His creation is sweet. His trampling is sweet. His fruitfulness is sweet. Everything is sweet about the Emperor of Sweetness. So, all the deeds of Krishna are sweet because they are all perfect. Whatever Krishna does is all perfect, and even if he is killing the demons, his liberating is sweet because he is liberating everyone. Whoever comes in touch with him gets benefited, even the demons. And his stealing is sweet. He's stealing the butter in the house of the gopis. That's the love of the gopis. He's reciprocating with their desires. Otherwise, he's the Lord of Lakshmi. He doesn't need to steal. His love sports. And everything he wears, Gunja berry necklace, his flower garland, the Yamuna river, his pastimes all are sweet. But as we say, his holy name is sweet, but our tongue is inflicted by the jaundice of ignorance, that we are not able to see that sweetness, in everything that Krishna does. So, but we have to, keep on hearing it. As we hear about Krishna, associate with Krishna's devotees, our disease is going away. So in jaundice, we are not able to taste the sweetness, but as the disease goes away, we'll experience the higher taste. And so the things of this material world will then become, will not be tasty anymore. Will appear very bad in front of Krishna. So many devotees, as we were saying, right? It is a wonder that people give up the nectar of chanting the holy name, but instead they take poison by speaking everything else. So, as Tina Mataji was saying yesterday, in the office, when there are meetings, everybody is talking about so many things, what they did over the weekend and what is the weather like. And for the devotee, it feels like, oh, this is poison. We don't want to hear this. We only want to hear about Krishna. So that would be it's like somebody has started to experience the sweetness in Krishna. So that's the level we have to go to. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. So Krishna is sweet, but we are diseased. So we can't perceive his sweetness. So we have to take the medicine of the holy name. Okay. Anything else anybody like to say? Share.
I can share, Prabhuji, from Ishopnishad, Mantra 4.
Okay.
Anejad ekam manaso javiyo naina deva apnuvan purvam arsat tad dhavato nyan atyeti tishtat Tasmin apo matarisva dadati. So translation is, although fixed in his abode, the personality of Godhead is swifter than the mind and can overcome all others running. The powerful demigods cannot approach him, although in one place he controls those who supply the air and rain. He surpasses all in excellence. So furthermore, like points that we can learn from the purport are, what Srila Prabhupada mentioned. So the absolute personality of Godhead can be only known by his devotees through his mercy. We cannot speculate simply and try to understand God. That is not going to work. So we have to associate with pure devotees and learn through them. So through their mercy only we will be able to understand Lord Krishna. And to prove this point that he can be understood only by his devotees, Srila Prabhupada has also mentioned that through mental speculation, even the great philosopher cannot know the Supreme Lord. And that reference is given in Brahma Samhita 5.34, where it is stated that even if non-devotee philosopher travels at the speed of wind or mind for hundreds and millions of years, absolute truth will still remain far from him. So, to prove that point, we can understand that, again, like by mental speculation, we cannot understand the absolute truth. And absolute personality of Godhead has his transcendental abode known as Golok. So, Lord Krishna resides in Golok, where he remains and engages in his pastime. Yet, by his inconceivable potencies, he can simultaneously reach every part of his creative energy. In order to understand that, in order to understand this analogy, the example of fire is given. So a fire can be situated at one place, but still can distribute its light and heat at some distance also. So similarly, absolute personality of Godhead also, even though he is fixed in his abode Golok, but he can diffuse his different energies everywhere. So the energies of the God is principally divided into three categories, namely internal potency, marginal potency, and external potency. So normally the human beings and the demigods belongs to the marginal energy, and material world. This material world is constitutes of the external potency, and the spiritual sky where the kingdom of God is situated is his internal potency. So although Lord and his energies are non-different, but still one should not mistake these energies for the supreme truth. So in Bhagavad Gita, again in chapter 10 verse number 2, he says that not even great rishis and suras can know him. Then what to speak of asuras, right? Whom there is no question of understanding how to understand the ways of God, how he works. So absolute truth is ultimately the absolute person. So absolute truth is nothing but Lord Krishna, who is the absolute person. Otherwise, there would have no need to mention so many details in support of his personal features. So at many places we see how elaborately the personal features of the Lord is mentioned. Although the individual parts and parcel of the Lord's, the marginal energy have all the symptoms of Lord himself, but still they have limited spheres of activity and therefore all limited. So even though we conditioned souls are parts and parcel of Lord, but we do have sometimes a little symptoms of Lord which he possesses, but that doesn't make us unlimited. We are still limited in our capacity, and one should try to learn the transcendence from Lord himself, who is the supreme source of all the Vedas. For the Lord alone has full knowledge about the transcendence. So when a person is intelligently using his active nature to understand this, then everything is Lord's potency. If he understands this, then he can revive his original consciousness, which is normally lost due to the association of Maya, external energy, for lifetime after lifetime. So all power is obtained from Lord only, and so each power that is obtained from him we should utilize in order to execute the will of God, and should not execute otherwise for serving any other material purposes. So Lord can be known by one who has adopted this submissive service attitude. So only by adopting this submissive service attitude we can know him. And perfect knowledge means like knowing Lord in all his features, and knowing his potencies, and also knowing how this potencies works by his will. And all these matters are like in detail explained and described by Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all Upanishads. Yeah, Prabhuji, if you want to add.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing.
So in this verse, we give the example of how Kalyavan was, running after Krishna, and Krishna was just walking in the Muchukunda pastime, but Kalyavan could not approach Krishna. But then we see Yashoda Mai also running after Krishna, and Yashoda is able to catch up to Krishna, because as we see, by bhakti Krishna is conquered, although he's swifter than the mind is so fast that we can be sitting here, but in a moment we can be anywhere. Like we can think about India and we can be in India, right? So it's so fast, the speed of mind, but Krishna is even faster than the mind.
Yes, thank you, Mataji, for it.
Okay, we'll hear some Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. So, there is one lecture I was thinking, Rupapad Maharaj gave in Alachua recently on Gaur Leela. So, let's see how it goes. And then I was hearing last night and I can't find it somehow. It's not in my history. I don't know where it went. So, where is this lecture? Just 1 minute.
It would be in a different Google account if you have multiple.
Yeah, let me see. I signed with the other account. Is the ISKCON Columbus? Maybe I was in that account. Yeah, it's here. It's in the ISKCON Columbus account. Talks on Gaur Leela, part 1. Yeah, I didn't hear. I fell asleep, so I hardly heard anything. I put the lecture, but I didn't hear it. So we'll hear this. See how it is. So let me know if you can hear, or let me share the screen
didn't come to Navadvip because he learned Nas and who was it that asked the question yesterday? Keshav Kashmiri, who was he in Krishna Lila? It was an online question?
This is day 2 part 1.
Huh?
This is not the one. Day 1 part
1. Mention of being the conqueror type, but that doesn't mean he didn't do it.
1 hour I was playing.
This in Kirtan. 6? You like? Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta. The story of Keshava Kashmiri is narrated both maybe narrated in all the other places as well, but Chaitanya Bhagavat and Chaitanya Charitamrita. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, elaborate commentary on Chaitanya Bhagavat. And I'll blend back and forth between Bhaktisiddhanta and Srila Prabhupada's purports. First of all, Keshava Kashmiri was a great devotee, very devoted to Goddess Saraswati. And in Bhaktisiddhanta's unique style, he describes that the original Saraswati is the goddess of fortune, as Lakshmi is to Narayan. So Goddess Saraswati is another name or a particular aspect of the goddess of fortune. He doesn't write this, but for example, because I like Brahma Samhita, when Lord Brahma received the first of his mantras, who did he receive that mantra from? Saraswati. And it's not his wife, because there was no wife. It was nothing. The lotus flower and darkness in all directions, and Lord Brahma. So, climbed down the lotus stem, couldn't find its end of the stem, he heard tapa, he went back up. And the tapa that he performed was chanting of his mantra. And the mantra that he received, the first of the two mantras that he received, was from Saraswati. Have you ever wondered? Now you can stop wondering. What Saraswati did he receive this mantra from? The goddess of fortune, Saraswati. An aspect of her known by the name Saraswati. And the same Saraswati is worshipable by Vaishnavas, just as Lakshmi is worshipable by Vaishnavas in relation to the Shaktiman, but worshipable. So this Keshava Kashmiri, Bhaktisiddhanta describes, he had a problem. He didn't write like that, but his problem was pride. And it's a very elaborate explanation, very highly philosophical explanation of what is pride and what's the consequence of pride. And the consequence of pride is the spiritual reality is blocked. And instead, one may receive something from the reflection of the internal potency or the spiritual potency of the spiritual realm. And that's this goddess Saraswati that materialistic persons or proud persons, even Vedic proud persons, worship. And he was such an ardent worshipper of Saraswati that she appeared before him. The goddess of fortunes, the goddess, the material goddess Saraswati, gave him a benediction. And she kept her word, with one exception. And the word was, she would enlighten his tongue. His speaking would always be her speaking through him. And he would always be victorious in presenting the teachings and philosophies and scholarship. So he was a very accomplished scholar, and he was very proud. That's not a good combination. Pride is not a good anything, but that was one of his characteristics. And with this benediction from Saraswati, he did what scholars of the time would do. And now going to Prabhupada's commentary on this Keshava Kashmiri story, just as in modern times, there are sports people, and they compete, and the victorious ones is, he's the victor, and the other one's the loser. And in more towards the mode of goodness, or in Vedic times, there may be passion and ignorance mixed with goodness, but it was kind of like a sport, that scholarly people would travel from place to place, and they would challenge somebody to a debate. And normally when there's a debate, there's kind of like, who's going to decide who wins, because you got to have a referee or something, because who's going to say who won? That description isn't there, but the debate can go on and on and on. And one of the acknowledgments of being defeated is one remains silent. Prabhupada describes it in his conversations with different people. So he Keshava Kashmiri, he called Kashmiri because he's from Kashmir. Kashmir is a very beautiful place, pristine, topographically and so forth. He traveled throughout India. And one of the businesses in going to travels throughout India is he'd go to holy places where there especially a congestion or a strong number of elevated scholarly Vaishnavas. He would make it his business to find out who's the most scholarly person in that place, and he would challenge them to a debate. And if they debated with him and they were defeated, then he somehow gets some acknowledgement, a written verification that they've been defeated. We know like this happened with Rupa Goswami, right? Traveling, challenging debater, and oh, you're too smart. There's no purpose in debating you. I'll just accept defeat even before there's a debate. Very good. Give me a written verification you've been defeated. The practice not only was a debate and one is defeated and one is the victor, but the one who's defeated becomes the disciple of the one who's the victor. And the disciple of the one who's defeated becomes the disciple of the victor. In this way, they would have many, many, many followers. And there was like gathering followers was the program. And the medium of gathering followers was debate and being very skilled in debate. You know, what to speak of having a blessing from Goddess Saraswati, you can never be defeated. So he was really fired up and very proud. And the way it's described is he had traveled throughout the length and breadth of India, and one of the places remaining for him to visit was Navadvip, because at that time Navadvip was one of the seats of higher learning, meaning many brahmanas, and amongst them many brahmanas, many very capable, elevated brahmanas. So he was, rubbing his hands together. I'm going to go to Navadvip and get more followers. That was his plan. And the description, that's not because Krishnadas Kaviraj was careful, purposely careful. He repeated some pastimes that were previously covered by Vrindavan Das Thakur in Chaitanya Bhagavat, but he didn't replicate. He didn't say the same thing that was already said, but he spoke other things that were not said, or wrote other things that were not said. So in Chaitanya Bhagavat, it said, when Keshava Kashmiri came to town, he had a big retinue. There were elephants, there were chariots, there were a whole big shebang coming to town. Here comes Keshava Kashmiri. And in Vrindavan Das Thakur's very special, sweet style, he described how the Brahmana community in Navadvip responded when Keshava Kashmiri came to town. They kind of scattered. They started to panic, and what's going to happen? He's got this reputation, and he's really good, and we don't have the goddess of Saraswati on the tips of our tongue like he does, and so what are we going to do when he challenges us? So they were intimidated. And that was part of his program. He would intimidate people, and then he'd try to beat them up philosophically and be victorious. Digvijay. It's a title that means, travel and defeat people. Digvijay. So when he came to Navadvip, he started asking, who's the most learned person? Many of the Brahmanas had scattered, but he heard about this young scholar in Navadvip who was a teacher in Sanskrit. Vyakarana is the procedure. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes that there are different systems of Vyakarana. There's the Panini system and then two other systems, and that's not the system. Panini was not the system that Nimai Pandit followed, but he was very expert. And the procedure was young boys for 12 years would just study grammar. You study anything for 12 years, you got to be good at it. But it's the root of Sanskrit teachings. So when becoming thoroughly versed in the root of Sanskrit teachings or the Vedas, you could have access to the Vedas. And say it conversely. Without it, you don't have the same access to the Vedas. And one of the procedures in Vyakarana was learning the root words, or dhatu. I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, but this much I know. And then the young boys, or the students of Vyakarana, they would learn different ways of reading or defining or taking the definition of a particular word based upon dhatu. Then you connect this dhatu with that suffix and that prefix, and you can get different meanings derived from the dhatu. So they could interpret texts in multiple ways. Interpret, that's like scholarship without descending knowledge, just scholarship to get access to knowledge, or the Vedas. But you have to have the Vyakarana. So it's a detail that's described in Chaitanya Bhagavat that's not in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Is one evening, Nimai Pandit was there by the bank of the Ganges with thousands of students. Now, I don't know how you give a class by the bank of the Ganges with thousands of students. You don't have a speaker system. But somehow, that's the description. And when he saw Nimai Pandit, he was moved by his beauty, his demeanor, his character just kind of went in all directions. He could understand this is a very special person. And he was on the hunt for somebody to debate with. So the Chaitanya Bhagavat description and the Chaitanya Charitamrita description differ a little bit. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita description, Keshava Kashmiri, introduced himself and then asked, "Are you Nimai Pandit? Tell me what you do. I've heard something about you." And Nimai Pandit replied with humility, like profound humility. I'm a little person I teach Sanskrit to a few students, and I think I know who you are. You're Keshava Kashmiri. You're a celebrity. And there was back and forth where, at least according to Prabhupada's explanation, Keshava Kashmiri was sarcastically commenting about how trivial and insignificant was being a grammar teacher, and conversely, how he was so skilled in composition and in knowledge and give orations. And so Nimai went along with the fun, and he said, "I've heard about your scholarship. Would you be so kind? We're by the side of the Ganges here. Could you recite some verses that give the glories of the Ganges?" Now, there's a different version. The version in Chaitanya Bhagavat, he went on for hours. He didn't stop. He just went on and on and on, glorifying the Ganges in poetry, Sanskrit poetry. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, he recited 100 verses and then stopped. And then there was a discussion between the two, where Nimai Pandit said, which many people said, "Your speaking is so elevated. How can one possibly understand it? It's so elevated." Yes, it's so elevated. Hardly anyone can understand it. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or Nimai Pandit at the time, said, "Could you, to help me understand, can we take one of those verses and examine it very carefully so you could explain to me the verse, the intention behind the verse?" So I have the verse. These are what's in Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is a detail that's not in Chaitanya Bhagavat. So this doesn't say which of the 100 verses, but here's the verse. Oh, Keshava Kashmiri said, "Which verse?" And Lord Chaitanya said, "This one," and he recited the verse verbatim. "The greatness of Mother Ganges always brilliantly exists. She is the most fortunate because she emanated from the lotus feet of Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. She is a second goddess of fortune, and therefore she is always worshipped both by demigods and by humanity. Endowed with all wonderful qualities, she flourishes on the head of Lord Shiva," which sounds poetic and very nice. And Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Keshava Kashmiri was stunned. How are you able to remember so many verses flowing like the wind, and you remember verbatim one of those verses? And Nimai said, "Some people are gifted this way, some people are gifted that way. Your gift is reciting Sanskrit poetry, my gift is memory. And all gifts that anyone has comes from the personality of Godhead anyways. Yad yad vibhutimat." The vibhutis, or opulences, of the Supreme Lord are sometimes endowed in this way to this one, or that way to that one, but it's all an opulence of the personality of Godhead from Bhagavad Gita. So you have this gift, I have that gift. And he was still amazed. He's just a young teacher, a grammar teacher. Then Nimai asked him, "Could you explain it?" The very nice verse. And he went on giving his explanation of the very nice verse. And then he said, "Oh, very nice. Could you describe to me what the qualities and the faults are in that verse?" And a little proud, he said, "Well, there's only good qualities and there's no faults." And then Nimai listed the qualities. There's this, that, the other, and the other, and the other. He listed 5 literary alankara, literary ornaments, and he expressed them explicitly. Because he's a grammar student, he knows all these rules about poetry. And then he said, "What are the faults?" And he said, "There are no faults." And then Nimai gave him a list of faults. And it's technical, and it's like many pages of technical, and I'm not going to go through all the technical. And Keshava Kashmiri was stunned. Now, normally when something like this takes place among scholars, they have a reply. But he had no reply. His intelligence went on vacation. And he could understand from this that Goddess Saraswati was displeased by something that he had done. And so Nimai made light of it and it suggested why don't you consider this conversation, and tomorrow we can meet again, you can recite some more wonderful poetry. So Keshava Kashmiri went to wherever he went to for the evening, mulling over what had just happened. And again, he could understand. Saraswati was somehow not pleased with me. I've never had this happen before, because she gave me this benediction. And he's never disappointed me. It must be I've made some mistake or some offense. I don't know what that is. I don't know what her reason for doing this is. So that night, there's a beautiful, I think it's a Pushkar painting, where he has a dream. And in his dream, he sees Nimai Pandit, and behind Nimai Pandit, he sees Radha and Krishna, etc., etc. He understands the divinity. So Saraswati appeared to him in his dream and instructed him. I have given you strength and capacity to speak wonderfully. But where does that capacity come from? It comes from the personality of Godhead. And he's the personality of Godhead. So before him, I can't speak. I can't say anything. So you can't say anything either. So you should understand who he is. And tomorrow morning, when you first get up in the morning, you go and you prostrate yourself before him, beg forgiveness, and accept him as the personality of Godhead. And she disappeared in the dream. During that discussion, just a detail, Lord Chaitanya points out there's a rule from Bharata Muni about poetry. Bharata Muni indicated that, it's a verse from his writings about poetry, if there's even one fault in a poem or a composition, then it's like a spot of leprosy on a body, and this whole thing becomes contaminated. The poetry is worthless. It should be discarded. So, here's a grammar student telling him about rules of poetry. And he just composed all this fantastic poetry that had not just one, but a number of faults. And then he went on to say, all of your poetry was filled with faults, filled with ornaments and filled with faults. See you tomorrow morning. Yeah. The capacity for someone to recognize transcendence, where does it come from? Where the same place that everything comes from. Illusion also comes from the same source, but to recognize truth comes from the same source. So Saraswati informed Keshava Kashmiri, you were speechless because I couldn't speak. I couldn't get on your tongue and say something. Because you haven't recognized him as the personality of Godhead. And you can't recognize him because you're too proud. You become proud by the gifts that I've given you, but you think yourself the owner of that gift. And therefore, you can't recognize transcendence. It's a detail, but it's a very nice detail. In Kena Upanishad, Bhaktisiddhanta narrates a passage from Kena Upanishad where the personality of Godhead assumes the form of a yaksha. What's a yaksha? Yakshas are followers of Kuvera. They're residents of this in between the earth and Swarga. They're followers of Kuvera. They're powerful. They're warriors. So the personality of Godhead assumed the form of a yaksha, and the yaksha was standing in the road. And the way that narration in Kena Upanishad reads, they requested the yaksha. First Agni came and said, "Could you please move? You're blocking the path." And he said, "Yes, but first, here's a blade of grass. See if you can ignite this blade of grass." And with all of his Agni power, he couldn't ignite the blade of grass. And then along came Vayu and said, "You're blocking the path. Can you please get out of the way?" He said, "Yes, but first, please, here's a blade of grass. With all the force of your wind, you please move the blade of grass." And he couldn't move the blade of grass. So then the yaksha revealed, because you're proud, you can't recognize the personality of Godhead. Revealed this identity as the personality of Godhead. Kena Upanishad. So the similarity is, so similarly, the Keshava Kashmiri couldn't recognize Nimai Pandit to be the personality of Godhead, but the goddess Saraswati revealed who he was. Later, it's described that he became a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya, and in course of time, because he was very, very scholarly, he received Diksha in the Nimbarka Acharya line, and he became a great scholar in Nimbarka Acharya line, and he wrote various writings glorifying the personality of Godhead. So it was a big switcheroo from the position of a prideful person. So we've in our Hare Krishna movement, we've all had the good fortune of meeting prideful people here and there from time to time, and it's not easy. But something that we're going to hear over the next few days. Humility is very. Sometimes people say don't be humble because people will take advantage of you. But humility has its own power and its own purity. And of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was not just humble, he's the personality of Godhead. But with that Shakti of the personality of Godhead, he persuaded or he moved the heart of a very prideful, blessed by Saraswati personality to come to the stage of accepting the personality of Godhead as a young fellow, a young teacher of grammar. So I thought that would be a nice place to start in preparation for Gaura Purnima, just to meditate on, hear about, remember the way this, because at this stage, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had not begun his Sankirtan pastimes. We're going to hear about that tomorrow. At least I plan to speak about it tomorrow. And his divinity was concealed purposefully. At the same time, it's converting a proud Digvijay Pandit to become a humble Vaishnava, at that, an exalted Vaishnava, was no small undertaking. When Nimai pointed out the faults, and Keshava Kashmiri was speechless, his students started to laugh. He told them, no, he's a very elevated person. Don't laugh. Respect him. So he was teaching by example and teaching by his words. Now, we don't have this capacity, but that's okay. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has that capacity. And we glorify him for how he did what he did, and the gift of transforming the heart of someone who was very proud to someone who he had become very humble. Gifted person. I think I'm going to end with that and see if there's some discussion.
Nimai Pandit told his students not to laugh, because it just makes me think how, he wasn't trying to cut him down, but he was being loving. He wanted to help him.
Yes.
And so it's just a nice reminder, I guess, for me, just thinking about when things happen, that it might not look so wonderful, but he has my best interest in mind, and he's trying to help.
Do you know the pastime where Duryodhana visited Indraprastha? And what looked like land was water, what water looked like land, and he fell into a pool that looked like land, and the queens were there, and the queens started laughing, and the respectful individual said, don't laugh, and Krishna said, no, laugh. Why? Same person, Krishna and Krishna. Because at least in this particular pastime with Krishna, he wanted that Duryodhana would break, because they were cousins, and he had already attempted murder and so many diabolical things. But break him to the point where no turning back. Though he wanted the war. He wanted before leaving this world, that the demoniac elements be eliminated, and the instrument was the war. And Chaitanya.
Is it Krishna said, laugh? I don't know, it says that here. Draupadi was laughing. Is anybody hearing?
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has a different purpose, and we're followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We're also Krishna devotees. We don't encourage people to laugh when somebody's embarrassed. But Krishna did, for a purpose, transcendental purpose. And we're followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yes, up front, over here. Raise your hand again so he can see you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So, towards the end of the Mahabharata, just speaking before the war, Krishna goes as a peacemaker, right? He goes on behalf of Pandavas. So, if he really wanted to have the war, then it looks like in this instance, Krishna wants to give an opportunity for Duryodhana to at least give them 5 villages to the Pandavas. So, I'm trying to understand, in that instance, what you just mentioned, Krishna wants Duryodhana to break down and have the war. But here, Krishna seems to be trying to settle at least by having 5. How do you understand?
First of all, he's omniscient. And being omniscient, he could have, there could have been a war without Krishna having the queens all laugh at him falling into the pond or into the pool. So what was he trying to accomplish? There was talk amongst the Kauravas, amongst the Pandavas, let's not have war. They're, some of the same sentiments as Arjuna. Because after all, yes, they did this, and yes, they did that, and yes, but they're cousins. So there's affection for that reason. So they were considering, how to not have this war? It looks like there's going to be war. So Krishna volunteered because he knew what the answer would be. But it made it in the public eye, it also made it very clear this person's impossible.